For the television series, see monk. A monk is a person who practices religious asceticism, living either alone or with any number of other monks. A monk may be a person who decided to dedicate his life to serving all other living beings, or to be an ascetic who voluntarily chooses to leave mainstream society and live his life in prayer and contemplation. The concept is ancient and can be seen in many religions and in philosophy. In the Greek language the term can apply to women, but in modern English it is mainly in use for men. The word nun is typically used for female monastics. A monk would shave the middle of his head with a stone, although the term monachos is of Christian origin. In the English language, monk tends to be used loosely also for both male and female ascetics from other religious or philosophical backgrounds. However, being generic, it is not interchangeable with terms that denote particular kinds of monk, such as friar, cenobite, hermit, anchorite, hesychast, or solitary. Eastern Christianity. In Eastern Orthodoxy, Oriental Orthodoxy, and Eastern Catholicism, monasticism holds a very special and important place. Angels are a light for monks, monks are a light for laymen. The Orthodox Church measures its health by the quality of its monks and nuns. Orthodox monastics separate themselves from the world in order to pray unceasingly for the world. They do not, in general, have as their primary purpose the running of social services, as is common in Western Christianity, but instead are concerned with attaining theosis, or union with God. However, care for the poor and needy has always been an obligation of monasticism, so Orthodox monasteries are not normally cloistered, like some contemplative Western houses are, though the level of contact will vary from community to community. Orthodox hermits, on the other hand, have little or no contact with the outside world. Orthodox monasticism does not have religious orders as are found in the West, nor do they have rules in the same sense as the rule of Saint Benedict. Rather, Eastern monastics study and draw inspiration from the writings of the Desert Fathers as well as other Church Fathers, probably the most influential of which are the Greater Asceticon and Lesser Asceticon of Saint Basil the Great and the Philokalia, which was compiled by Saint Nicodemus of the Holy Mountain and Saint Macarius of Corinth. Hesychasm is of primary importance in the ascetical theology of the Orthodox Church. Most communities are self-supporting, and the monastic's daily life is usually divided into three parts: communal worship in the Catholicon, hard manual labor, and private prayer, spiritual study, and rest when necessary. Meals are usually taken in common in a sizable dining hall known as a trapeza, at elongated refectory tables. Food is usually simple and is eaten in silence while one of the brethren reads aloud from the spiritual writings of the Holy Fathers. The monastic lifestyle takes a great deal of serious commitment. Within the cenobitic community, all monks conform to a common way of living based on the traditions of that particular monastery. In struggling to attain this conformity, the monastic comes to realize his own shortcomings and is guided by his spiritual father in how to deal honestly with them. Attaining this level of self-discipline is perhaps the most difficult and painful accomplishment any human being can make, but the end goal, to become like an angel on earth, is the reason monastics are held in such high esteem. For this same reason, bishops are almost always chosen from the ranks of monks. Eastern monasticism is found in three distinct forms: anchoritic, cenobitic, and the middle way between the two, known as the sketi. One normally enters a cenobitic community first, and only after testing and spiritual growth would one go on to the sketi or, for the most advanced, become a solitary anchorite. However, one is not necessarily expected to join a sketi or become a solitary. Most monastics remain in the cenobim the whole of their lives. In general, Orthodox monastics have little or no contact with the outside world, including their own families. The purpose of the monastic life is union with God, the means is through leaving the world. After tonsure, Orthodox monks and nuns are never permitted to cut their hair. The hair of the head and the beard remain uncut as a symbol of the vows they have taken, a reminiscent of the Nazarites from the Old Testament. The tonsure of monks is the token of a consecrated life, and symbolizes the cutting off of their self-will. Degrees. The process of becoming a monk is intentionally slow, as the vows taken are considered to entail a lifelong commitment to God, and are not to be entered into lightly. In Orthodox monasticism, after completing the novitiate, there are 3 ranks of monasticism. There is only one monastic habit in the Eastern Church, and it is the same for both monks and nuns. Each successive grade is given a portion of the habit, the full habit being worn only by those in the highest grade, known for that reason as the Great Schema, or Great Habit. The various profession rites are normally performed by the abbot, but if the abbot has not been ordained a priest, or if the monastic community is a convent, a hieromonk will perform the service. The abbot or hieromonk who performs a tonsure must be of at least the rank he is tonsuring into. In other words, only a hieromonk who has been tonsured into the Great Schema may himself tonsure a schema monk. A bishop, however, may tonsure into any rank, regardless of his own. Novice, lit. 1. Under obedience. Those wishing to join a monastery began their lives as novices. After coming to the monastery and living as a guest for not less than 3 days, the revered abbot or abbess may bless the candidate to become a novice. There is no formal ceremony for the clothing of a novice. He or she simply receives permission to wear the clothing of a novice. In the Eastern monastic tradition, novices may or may not dress in the black inner cassock and wear the soft monastic hat, depending on the tradition of the local community, and in accordance to the abbot's directives. The inner cassock and the skoufos are the first part of the Orthodox monastic habit. In some communities, the novice also wears the leather belt. He is also given a prayer rope and instructed in the use of the Jesus prayer. If a novice chooses to leave during the period of the novitiate, no penalty is incurred. He may also be asked to leave at any time if his behavior does not conform to the monastic life, or if the superior discerns that he is not called to monasticism. When the abbot or abbess deems the novice ready, he is asked if he wishes to join the monastery. Some, out of humility, will choose to remain novices all their lives. Every stage of the monastic life must be entered into voluntarily. Rasifor, lit. Although there are no formal vows made at this point, the candidate is normally required to affirm his commitment to persevere in the monastic life. The abbot will then perform the tonsure, cutting a small amount of hair from 4 spots on the head, forming a cross. He is then given the outer cassock, an outer robe with wide sleeves, something like the cowl used in the West, but without a hood, from which the name of Rasifor is derived. He is also given a brimless hat with a veil, known as a klobuk, and a leather belt is fastened around his waist. His habit is usually black, signifying that he is now dead to the world, and he receives a new name. Although the Rasifor does not make formal vows, he is still morally obligated to continue in the monastic estate for the rest of his life. Some will remain Rasifors permanently without going on to the higher degrees. Stavrophor, lit. Cross-bearer. The next level for Eastern monastics takes place some years after the first tonsure, when the abbot feels the monk has reached an appropriate level of discipline, dedication, and humility. This degree is also known as the Little Schema, and is considered to be a betrothal to the Great Schema. At this stage, the monk makes formal vows of stability, chastity, obedience and poverty. Then he is tonsured and clothed in the habit, which in addition to that worn by the Rasifor, includes the paramandias, a piece of square cloth worn on the back, embroidered with the instruments of the Passion, and connected by ties to a wooden cross worn over the heart. The paramandias represents the yoke of Christ. Because of this addition, he is now called Stavrophor, or cross-bearer. He is also given a wooden hand cross, which he should keep in his icon corner, and a beeswax candle, symbolic of monastic vigilance, the sacrificing of himself for God. He will be buried holding the cross, and the candle will be burned at his funeral. In the Slavic practice, the stavrofor also wears the monastic mantle. The rasan worn by the stavrofor is more ample than that worn by the rasifor. The abbot increases the stavrofor monk's prayer rule, allows a more strict personal ascetic practice, and gives the monk more responsibility. Great Schema. Monks whose abbot feels they have reached a high level of spiritual excellence reach the final stage, called the Great Schema. The tonsure of a schema monk follows the same format as the stavrofor, and he makes the same vows and is tonsured in the same manner. But in addition to all the garments worn by the stavrofor, he is given the analavos, which is the article of monastic vesture emblematic of the Great Schema. For this reason, the analavos itself is sometimes called the Great Schema. The analavos comes down in the front and the back, somewhat like the scapula in Western monasticism. Although the two garments are probably not related, it is often intricately embroidered with the instruments of the Passion and the Trisagion. The Greek form does not have a hood. The Slavic form has a hood and lappets on the shoulders, so that the garment forms a large cross covering the monk's shoulders, chest, and back. Another piece added is the polystavron, or many crosses, which consists of a cord with a number of small crosses plaited into it. The polystavron forms a yoke around the monk and serves to hold the analavos in place, and reminds the monastic that he is bound to Christ and that his arms are no longer fit for worldly activities, but that he must labor only for the kingdom of heaven. Among the Greeks, the mantle is added at this stage. The paramandias of the megaliskimos is larger than that of the stavrofor, and if he wears the klobuk, it is of a distinctive thimble shape, called a kokleon, the veil of which is usually embroidered with crosses. In some monastic traditions the Great Schema is only given to monks and nuns on their deathbed, while in others they may be elevated after as little as 25 years of service. Eastern Orthodox monks are addressed as Father, even if they are not priests, but when conversing among themselves, monks will often address one another as brother. Novices are always referred to as brother. Among the Greeks, old monks are often called geronda, or elder, out of respect for their dedication. For the Orthodox, mother is the correct term for nuns who have been tonsured stavrofor or higher. Novices and rasifors are addressed as sister. Nuns live identical ascetic lives to their male counterparts and are therefore also called monarchi, and the community is likewise called a monastery. Many Orthodox seminaries are attached to monasteries, combining academic preparation for ordination with participation in the community's life of prayer, and hopefully benefiting from the example and wise counsel of the monks. Bishops are required by the sacred canons of the Orthodox Church to be chosen from among the monastic clergy. It should be noted that the requirement is specifically that they be monastics, not simply celibate. Monks who have been ordained to the priesthood are called hieromonks. Monks who have been ordained to the diaconate are called hierodeacons. A schema monk who is a priest is called a hieroschema monk. Most monks are not ordained. A community will normally only present as many candidates for ordination to the bishop as the liturgical needs of the community require.